I returned from Afghanistan, and my wife asked, "Who are you?" standing in our doorway with my 7-year-old son Jake behind her. But instead of relief, I saw pure terror. She stepped back and said, "David died 3 months ago. They sent his body home, and I buried my husband." And when Jake tried to run to me, she grabbed him and said, "That's not your father." A man appeared behind her, tall and confident, putting his hand on her shoulder. And when he saw me, he said, "I'm Ryan, Claire's husband, and you need to leave before I make you." I pulled out my military ID with shaking hands and said, "Check the photo. Call my unit. I'm David Morrison, and I've been alive this whole time." But Ryan took a picture and said he was calling the police because the real David Morrison died in an IED attack. The police arrived and ran my information, and the officer came back confused, saying, "Sir, you're listed as active duty and alive, but there's also a death certificate filed 3 months ago with full military honors." They took us to the station where a woman in army uniform sat across from me and said, "Sergeant, someone went through a lot of trouble to fake your death." The notification came through official channels, but the officer who signed off doesn't exist. She pulled out documents and said your wife remarried only 6 weeks after your supposed death to Ryan Kendrick, a financial advisor who specializes in military family death benefits, and showed me emails between Claire and Ryan dating back over a year, messages about insurance policies and finding someone who could handle the paperwork. My stomach dropped as she explained they'd paid Ryan's brother Michael, who worked as a contractor at Bagram Airfield, $50,000 to steal my personal effects and create the false death record using a civilian killed in an actual attack. The life insurance company had paid out $400,000 to Claire within 6 weeks, and she and Ryan had already spent $75,000 on a new house and car before I came home 2 weeks early and ruined everything. Lieutenant Colonel Webb leaned forward and said the shock on your wife's face wasn't joy that you were alive, it was horror that you weren't dead, because accepting you were real meant their plan had failed. They arrested Claire and Ryan that night while Jake watched from Child Protective Services, and over the next months, the conspiracy unraveled with Michael caught at Bagram and an admin sergeant with gambling debts who'd processed the fake paperwork for $30,000. Claire's lawyer tried to argue she'd been manipulated and emotionally vulnerable, but the prosecution destroyed that defense with emails showing she'd been an active participant in planning every detail. Ryan got 15 years in federal prison, his brother got 12, and Claire got 10 with possibility of parole after 7, while the house was seized and the insurance company sued to recover everything. I filed for emergency custody of Jake, who ran to me crying and said, "I knew it was you, Daddy." I told Mommy, but she wouldn't listen, and we started therapy together to process the betrayal of a mother who'd chosen money over her son's father. 2 years later, I got a letter from Claire in prison trying to explain, saying seeing me alive on the porch had shattered her because she'd spent 3 months believing I was dead while feeling guilty about the insurance money, but I read it once and put it in a drawer because I wasn't ready to forgive someone who tried to erase my existence. Jake's 15 now, doing well in school, and last week he called to say thank you for handling everything the way you did, for not making me choose sides. And after we hung up, I sat on my porch thinking about that day 10 years ago when I stood on a different porch with my duffel bag, staring at a wife who claimed not to know me, and how my life had shattered in that moment before slowly piecing itself back together, because surviving the impossible teaches you what you're really made of. And when I returned from Afghanistan to find my wife had tried to erase me from existence, I discovered that sometimes the worst betrayals prove what you're truly capable of becoming.